The human side of lab automation is something that you've been thinking about. I'm curious, how do we factor in sort of culture and human, I would say, habits as we think about changing the way in which science is done?
Yeah, I think that's something that comes up really frequently as an automation engineer, working with liquid handlers on one end or other robotics and folks who have potentially never interacted with equipment like this. And I think the real thing that you have to keep in mind is you need to be able to, as a lab automation engineer, work with folks from a lot of different disciplines. So the way that you would describe an assay that is running on a liquid handler to a scientist, for example, to help them understand what is actually happening and what factors matter from a lab automation setting as opposed to a manual setting is very different from how I would describe an assay to another lab automation engineer, which would differ significantly from how I would describe a process to a software engineer who might be working with the lab automation engineer. I think being able to communicate across all these different types of technical fields is so specific to a lab automation engineer in some ways. And it's also really interesting because as a company that might be running many different types of assays within one building with only one or two automation engineers there, they're also working between many different scientific disciplines. So not only are you just working with one scientist, right? You might be working with 10. And each one of them has a different experience and understanding of automation. So being able to communicate effectively, but then also designing your protocols and workflows to match what the actual experience of the user is really, really important. And really helping them understand, or at least this is personally something I feel very strongly about, helping them understand what's actually happening will help them troubleshoot and help the automation engineer troubleshoot also, because there's just so much nuance to how science is run. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to develop an assay that's comparable or acceptable to the manual assay itself. And so you're really working in a cross-discipline way, and you want to build an error resistant system as much as possible. You really want it to be a robust process. And so, yeah, there's a human component in kind of every part of this job.